Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us at our very first talk for this year's Arbor Day events. So my name's Allison Wright, and we're hosting this meeting through the Maui Association of Landscape Professionals. So we have a technical problem with the extra phone running here, so give us 1 second. Okay, that's better. No more feedback. Okay, so we're very excited we're here. So we really appreciate all of our sponsors this week. So we have Maui Association of Landscape Professionals, we have Hawaiian Electric, and we have Maui Nui Botanical Gardens. And so for our very first talk, let's get started. So we're going to introduce you to Hannah Luchin of the County Extension Office through the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources. I had to think what CTAR meant. So she's an extension agent here in Maui County, and if you have any questions, she's the perfect person to go take all of your landscape questions to on a regular basis. So we'll go ahead and start and introduce you to Hannah.
Hello, everyone, and happy Arbor Day week. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to thank the sponsors again for hosting and coordinating this event. And today, like Allison said, my name is Hannah Luchin, and I work for the University of Hawaii at Manoa with the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources. And today, I'm going to demonstrate how to plant this beautiful Lolu, which is a Pritchardia remota palm. So just a few brief introduction to the Pritchardia remota. Pritchardia is a genus composed of 27 species that are native to South, East, and Central Pacific Islands, as well as Hawaii. Out of those 27 species, 24 are endemic to the Hawaiian Islands, which is actually pretty amazing in that they evolved specifically to the Hawaii Islands and they created specific species that only exist here in Hawaii. So today we're going to plant the Pritchardia remota. This is a nice endemic palm species native to Nihoa and Niihau. Nihoa is the northernmost island in just north of Niihau. This is a coastal Pritchardia. It gets to be about 30 to 100 feet tall, but it does prefer more coastal, drier environments, but it does like well-drained soil. So just a few things about the biology of Lolu or Pritchardia. So this is a monocot, meaning that it has one cotyledon, or when the seed germinates, there's only one true leaf that comes out. And because it's a monocot, it is sensitive to injury. Instead of growing out, like similar to dicots or woody trees, the vascular system is throughout the plant tissue. If it does enlarge the vascular system, the entire plant just spreads out. But a neat fact about monocots is it is sensitive to injury. So any damage to the trunk is permanent and it cannot seal itself from that wound. So just keep that in mind when you're planting and pruning. Another neat thing about Pritchardia remota and the Pritchardia genus in general is that traditionally the Hawaiian culture would use these coastal palmate leaves for thatching. So it's great for the roofs of houses, and they would eat the green immature fruit. They're similar to coconuts. They're really tasty. Just wanted to show you quickly. Thanks to Tamara, we collected a seed. So this is what the seed looks like. The green immature seed fruit is what the Hawaiians would eat. And if you cut it open, you will see it looks similar to a coconut, which is very nice and edible. The Lolu was also used for medicine as well. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate how to plant this tree. So the first part is we pre-dug our hole. But Pritchardia and palms in general do not like to be planted too deep. So as a general rule of thumb, I always like to measure my planting hole prior to planting it because you never want to plant too deep. So I take my pot. This is a 2-gallon pot size, but you just measure the diameter, the widest part. So it's about 1 foot, okay? So the width is 1 foot and the depth is about 8 inches. So as a general rule of thumb, you want to plant your digging hole, plan to have it 2 to 3 times as wide as the diameter of your plant and the same depth. You never want to plant it deeper. And even with palms, it's sometimes nice to have it a little bit higher. So we dug the hole and the width is about 3 feet. And the depth is also about 9 inches. Okay, so now that we have our plant, I will show you a few ways to carefully get your plant out of the pot. There's several different ways, but what I like to do is gently lay her on the side. You can slowly push on the pot, kind of wiggle it out. You can gently use a foot, apply pressure, kind of roll it. And as soon as you loosen it up, another way is to, from the back with the hole, you can kind of push and wiggle. You can also, if it's really root bound, you can use your pruners and just cut the pot off. That really helps with root bound plants. All right, so we have the plant out of its pot. I'll just show you, it created a nice root system. The bottom, you can tease the roots slightly, loosen them up at the bottom and on the sides. I'd recommend that for especially your very root bound plants so it doesn't contain the shape of the pot while planting. But this one's pretty good. I will tease it up a little bit. And then you place her in the hole. This is the fun and important part. So now that you place her in the hole, take a step back and think about how you want it to look, what angle you like. I'm thinking this is a good angle. You like that? Take a step back. Another thing when you're planting is please be aware of the plants around you and the spacing. It's very important. So because this is a solitary palm, it'll grow tall and skinny with the canopy on the top, and it's growing next to other Pritchardias. So for this instance, it's about 10 feet away from the next Pritchardia, which is a good space. So now that we have her in the hole, looking pretty, the right angle we want her, we'll double check that it is not too deep. So you take your handy shovel, and this is a nice rule of thumb is you can just lay it directly across the plant and measure if it is level with the existing soil. Okay, so this looks just perfect. It's exactly level. You can even test it this way. Very good. I might add a little bit underneath. As you are filling the hole, I do recommend if you have some Palm Special fertilizer, a balanced fertilizer, you can use a 888 NPK or compost in this instance. Sprinkle some compost in. Mix in some of your native soil that you excavated out when you dug the hole. All right, and this is the fun part. It's kind of like baking, is mixing your soil and compost together. And we're gonna stick a little bit more soil down beneath. All right. Perfect. Level, make sure it's level. And then backfill with more soil. So most palms, the palm family is a large family, but most palms are not too picky about their soil. They do, however, prefer a nice well-drained soil. If you prefer gloves, you can use gloves. I like to plant trees with my hands personally. Whatever floats your boat. And when you're backfilling, always leave it. It's always also good when you're planting to kind of scratch around and identify your first roots of the plant and to make sure that it is exposed and it is not buried. You never want to go mound a bunch of soil up around the base because that can cause, that can create a wet spot, which is susceptible to rotting or different fungal pathogens. So smooth it out. And then while I'm backfilling, I always like to water it in to make sure this is helpful because you're giving the plant water and also to see if you have air pockets. So as you're planting, another important consideration is that your soil texture. So where you are on the island, we are lucky to be planting this palm tree here at Maui Nui Botanical Garden, which is in Kahului, Hawaii. And here we're working with very sandy soils, right? So sandy soils are well drained. You can see the water is running straight down. It actually infiltrates quickly. Give it a nice, good soak. If you are in a clayer area, so Waihe'e, Wailuku, you might have more, or even West Maui, a clay type soil, which is very fine. It has a slow infiltration rate, so water will run off quickly. And in that case, please be careful not to compact the soil too much because you can crush the soil structure and you can actually create even more compaction and reduce your infiltration rate. So you do just want to be aware of your soil type. All right. Now that we have it all watered in to our ideal place, you can still see that the The soil is saturated, it's well drained, and the roots, it is planted level or slightly above the natural soil profile and the natural grade of the soil. So now that we have it planted, I always recommend some mulch. So here we have some local mulch, shredded tree bark, and mulch is very good because it helps conserve soil moisture. It adds nitrogen and carbon to feed the microbes. It will slowly break down, providing nutrients to the tree. All right. Now that we have our mulch, I like to spread it. You can use about 2 to 3 inches thick or deep, but when you're spreading, make sure that you don't want the mulch right up to the tree again, because that can create a wet spot. It can actually increase the chances of rot. So leave a nice ring around the tree trunk. Mulch also looks nice and it helps reduce weeds. It helps suppress weeds from growing. You can also use a rake, which is another good tool. All right. So now we have our beautiful Crotchardia palm in the location, the arrangement we want it. It's nice and mulched and watered in. Looks good. There you have it. Any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat.
Thank you, Hannah, for talking to us today. If anybody has any questions, if you don't know how to use chat, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you can type in a chat question. Click on that. Make sure you send it to the group so that we know we can see it. And then we'll repeat the question and then we'll put it on there. So this is going to run, right now it's running live on Facebook. We'll save the whole video and we'll post it on the Maui Association of Landscape Professionals Facebook page. But like we said, if you have any questions, let us know. And then just checking to see if there's anyone else. So, but yeah, if you want to, you can actually unmute yourself or request to unmute yourself to ask a question as well. So if you want to see, so Hannah, one question we had is about compacting the soil. So how much do you want to compact the soil? Do you want to stomp on it a lot? Do you want to use just like lightly tap with your foot? Or do you want to do it in a different way?
Sure. So it really depends on your soil type, but I never recommend compacting it too much. So you can lightly compact it if you have more sandy or loamy, a silty type soil that has larger particles and larger pore spaces. You can slowly use your foot, kind of tap it in. But I also like water. Water can also do the same thing. It's always a light compaction, never too much. If you're in a clayey soil area with very small particles, please be careful about the compaction. I would do it even less and use water and break up the clay. It's very important that you break up the large clods and excavate, again, 2 to 3 times wider than your plant so that the roots have a chance to expand and grow and it's not growing in really compacted, thick soil. So it gives the plant a better opportunity to establish itself. Good question. Any other questions or comments?
Okay, our next question is, do you know if this tree is going to be irrigated?
Oh, great question. Yes, this tree will be irrigated. We're in sunny, hot Kahului with sandy soils. So it's probably going to need to be irrigated probably like 10 minutes, maybe 5 days a week, or until it is established and puts in roots. So yeah, you do want to irrigate and watch your tree after planting to make sure that it has enough water and nutrients to thrive. If you're in a more windy area, so the windward side of the island, you can probably irrigate less, but it still is a good idea to establish it to irrigate it that first year.
So one thing so people know, so Arbor Days are all over the country. Arbor Day is the season is decided based on when the best planting time is. So our Arbor Day is actually in November because in Hawaii some of the best planting times are closer to the end of our years because that's when our more rainy season is. So hopefully you won't have to irrigate as much, but we are in a really dry spot here. So we do have another question is, can you talk a little bit about mulch, a little more about your mulch or different kinds of mulch
Sure.
that you could use? So this one is, I think, one that they made here at the Botanical Garden.
So this is just a shredded mulch that they had here with a chipper or is brought in. But there are several different types of mulch. There's the shredded woody mulch. There's different thicknesses. There's thicker, there's more coarse mulch, and then there's a thinner mulch. You can go to Simplot or Home Depot. You can buy mulch that is imported from the mainland or elsewhere. There's a redwood bark type mulch, which is nice. You can also use McNut shells. That makes a great mulch. You can use newspaper or leaves or grass clippings. They're all different. There's so many different types of mulch you can use. Because this is woodier, it's going to take a little bit longer to break down compared to a more leaf or green grassy mulch that will break down quicker. So this is nice. It's pretty large chunks of mulch, you can see. So it will help reduce weed growth and conserve soil moisture. So you won't need to irrigate as much. And again, just when you're mulching, I typically recommend 2 to 4 inches thick or deep. But again, please keep a space around the base of your plant so you're not rotting out your plant. Good question.
So Hannah, we have a question about mulch. Is cinders considered mulch?
Cinder is a material. You can use cinder as mulch. That is more of a mineral-based mulch, so it's probably going to have less carbon or nitrogen, but it's still great in terms of weed suppression, conserving soil moisture, and certain plants like cinders. So anthuriums thrive in cinders. You can plant it directly in cinders, or orchids are epiphytic, so they like more natural based media, so cinders or core bark or even palm bark. But cinders is a great source. You can kind of use it as mulch, but again, it's more mineral based compared to this carbon and nitrogen rich material.
So you also mentioned fertilizer. Mm-hmm. So you said Palm Special. So what's so special about a fertilizer called Palm Special?
So Palm Special is just a type, more or less a brand, but it is specifically balanced for palm trees. So palm trees actually require high amounts of boron, potassium, magnesium, and manganese, higher than other plants. And typically you can start to see after a year or two, if you're seeing your plant become yellow, has chlorotic tips of the older fronds, that is probably a potassium and or magnesium deficiency. So it is good to help get that plant established, to give it some compost or some granular fertilizer or even foliar fertilizer at the time of planting. You can use a 888 NPK the first year and then bump that up to a 13. And then also another type of Palm Special is this fertilizer That is a 8 nitrogen, 2 phosphate, 12 potassium oxide, and 4 magnesium with micronutrients. That's another great fertilizer. And make sure when you are buying synthetic fertilizers that 100% of the nitrogen, potassium, magnesium are slow release. You do want slow release because it's humid here, things break down quickly, and you want to make sure the plant is slowly absorbing those nutrients. Good question.
Okay, be sure you put any other questions in our chat room. So let's just give it a second, see if anyone has any more questions. One thing, you might want to see Hannah again on Friday afternoon at 3. Hannah's been working on a nut sedge suppression program. So she's been trialing kind of using different kinds of mulch and different kinds of barriers to do a physical barrier instead of a chemical control of nut sedge. So that'll be on Friday at 3. So go to the same place you found this link at arbordayexpo.com and you'll see that link. And then at 2 o'clock today, you'll get to see me learn about plant propagating for home. So it's all the basics of plant propagating. So you can learn about for anything from divisions and making more plants for yourselves or your neighbors or your friends, and also even maybe start your own business. So let's see if there's any other questions.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much to Malp, Kulua, Kaulunani, Hawaii Electric, My Nui Botanical Garden. It's a pleasure to be here. Happy Arbor Day and happy tree planting.